don't try to automate everything at the same time, because it's definitely going to feel very overwhelming.
It's because when you go to build the automation and you're like, oh, what do I say? You want to have something you're going to put in there. Welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where we're going to break down the business of fitness and nutrition. And today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into our automation chat. We're going to go, talk deep into 2 or 3 day-to-day kind of, you have your business running automations and just the actual, like, what you should do, the tactical pieces, ask some questions, and just hopefully, A, if you're not doing these, make it easy for you to do them, or B, at least get you to think of other ways. And then the third episode that we're going to record on automations is going to be more for that kind of growth and scale. Some of those maybe nice to haves, the things that when you get there, sure, start thinking about and just have some conversations. But today we're going to do the things that, hey, you have 5 clients or so, you should start putting some basic things in place just to make your life a little bit easier. More importantly, guarantee they happen and save yourself some time. So strap in, buckle up, and we're going to have some fun today.
Now, before we get actually into the meat and potatoes again, make sure you smash that subscribe button. It's really important, guys, that if you're looking for this information and you know people that are also looking for it, please share this. It makes such a big difference. And it helps us understand, again, what you guys are looking for, what you're finding valuable. And last but not least, as you subscribe, there are playlists that we have on our YouTube channel specifically with all these things cobbled together. So if you're like, hey, I'm a new coach, I'm just starting out, I have no idea where to even start, we have a playlist for the coaches startup kind of playlist. We have the automations and the business playlist. We even have movement demos on there. If you're not quite sure, if you're seeing something crazy, which some people really don't move well, and they're putting movement demos out. So there's a whole wide range of stuff beyond the podcast and Beyond the Pump that are on our YouTube channel. So again, please head over there, smash that subscribe button, and then go back and watch the previous couple episodes, because we have gone through a business streak here recently, because we did get a lot of inquiries around those things. So for those of you that sent those requests in, thank you so much. It really does make a big difference. So without further ado, part two.
So automation number 1 that I'm going to say you should do is ensuring people that you've spoken to and you've set up a call, a sales call with, actually show up to that call. We've talked about it. We had Nick on recently. We talked about sales, and we've obviously talked about CRMs, and we've done a lot of conversations around the idea. But spending all that time marketing, creating the audience, creating that engagement, having those conversations, and then getting somebody to just no-show you, well, that kind of sucks. The thing that I'll say is 100% show rate. It's not realistic. Some people out there are going to appease you and just say, yeah, I'll do this time. And they never have any intention of showing up. So when we think about that, our goal is to increase it as best as we can. 70 to 80% is probably going to be, wow, that's good. Like, that's where we really, truly want to be. 100% over time is unrealistic. You might hit a streak and 10 out of 10 show up, but we're not trying to get to 100%. We're trying to increase it as high as it really can be, knowing there's just a certain subset of population that they're just not going to show no matter what you do. Now, the other thing before we jump into this is you should have permission to contact somebody. I'm going to not be super specific there, but the general guidance on that is if you're going to be sending somebody communications, you should have permission to do so. So take that as you wish. But if you're thinking, I'm going to run paid ads and then I'm going to try to get people to show up to calls, just the example would be, make sure they're opting in to potentially receive a text from you if that's the way you're going to go. And I would suggest you send text messages if you can and if you have the know-how, but just make sure you have that permission, because there are laws and things like that around certain types of communication, automation, things like that. So just that quick little warning. I've seen people get in trouble. But first things first, we want people to show up, and we want more people to show up to this call. Well, a favorite game that I love to play, and this is, Andrew, you actually taught me this. I forget the name of it, but you go through the idea where, well, if I didn't want them to show up, what would I do? Well, we would probably send nothing. Okay. Should I send them text messages? Absolutely not. Should I send them emails? Of course not. Should I send them a reminder with the link in it? No. Why would I do that? Should I send them a DM with some information on there? Of course not. Should I send them an email with information about me, my services, and all these things so they get a little bit, they know a little bit more about what we do before the call? No. And then you go back and you're like, all right, well, cool. If we wanted to ensure they didn't show up, we would do all those things. But what if we wanted to ensure they did show up? Well, let's do the opposite. Okay. So, thing number one, and start small, you can always add on. Once they confirm, make sure whatever service you're using to send, call it the reminder email or the confirmation email. So, Calendly, Go High Level, a lot of those companies have the kind of appointment confirmation already built into that service. And usually they'll include some type of button for the person to be able to add it to their calendar, or it'll automatically pop up in their calendar. The thing that I would recommend that you do is they book it, it goes. I would actually grab their email address and literally book an appointment on your calendar with their email as the invited email address. You can set that automation up in Zapier, and it's basically take this, take that. So Calendly booking, pull these two pieces in, and then go ahead and book it. And that almost forces somebody to now have that in their calendar. And a lot of people live and breathe by their calendars. Now, out of the gates, you should have not only an email reminder from whatever software you're using, but also that kind of that email block or that appointment block in their calendar. And that's going to be kind of those two things that happen out of the gates. You can automate both of those. Zapier would be for that second component, getting the booking in their calendar. Now, above and beyond that, and there has to be some time and you have to think through the timing, but you want to then send them an email of, hey, welcome. I'm excited to spend some time with you, learn about you. Here's what to expect on the upcoming call. You shouldn't go down the road of I'm going to ask you 48 questions and it's going to get uncomfortable and see why you failed all the way up until now. But rather, we're going to dive in and start to understand the root cause of why you're here today and how we can truly help solve your problems. Stuff like that. So automation piece number one is going to be sending them an email. Again, a Go High Level, you can do things like Zapier, sending out Gmail, things like that are all going to suffice with making that happen. So they book it. That's going to be the trigger. A trigger is effectively what causes the automation to kind of kick off and start. What is that service? What is Zapier looking for to know that, okay, let me start doing these things? And the things that it does are called actions. So triggers and actions. What makes it start? And then what are the actions it does once it starts? So the trigger, appointment is booked. Action, send that email. We now want them to go ahead and get to know us a little bit more, give them some semblance of expectations, and don't go over the top. I'm super excited to see you and it's going to be amazing. And like, no, you don't really know them yet. You might not get along. Like, here's the thing. You want to be your personality, but also give them the right expectations of what to expect, which is ultimately to uncover the best way to help them solve their problem. Thing number two, should you have time, is a separate email that is going to be more around the idea of testimonials or information that they could also get about you potentially through the internet, i.e., looking at your Instagram, looking at your website, looking at your TikTok, Facebook, whatever it might be, but just sending some of that stuff, some of the case studies, some of the things that you've been able to do and the people you've been able to help. And the reason I say, should you have time, is you're going to send them an email today. If they book for tomorrow morning, there may not be enough time between the time of booking and the appointment itself to send a whole bunch of emails. And you don't want to send 5 in one day. The next thing you want to do after that is you're going to remind them roughly 24 hours in advance of their appointment that they have an appointment. This one would be ideal in email and text message. Again, especially on that text, make sure you have some permission. And then the last thing you want to do, and I'm actually going to say, I would love for you to manually do this. So you're going to send yourself a reminder to do it. But if you want to automate it because you're lazy and you don't actually care about growing your business, then that's fine. But basically a 30 to 40 minute in advance of the call, just one last reminder, hey, looking forward to seeing you here soon type mentality. The reason we send that and you don't want to do it in exactly an hour or exactly 30 minutes, and you want to do it like 23 minutes, 37 minutes, is you're a real person, ideally sending that message where if I go, hey, Andrew, looking forward to seeing you in 30 minutes, it's a little bit harder for Andrew to cancel on a real human versus just a computer automation. And it's also serves as a reminder. Now, again, their thing might be at 6 in the morning and 5 a.m. Like all these components are going to play a role in being able to do that. But if you can send that one, I guarantee you're going to get a lot more people that actually show up. That would be my like base level big thing number one of the stuff I would do. Now if they've booked 5 days in advance, you might send them an extra email and or text message reminder throughout that or some version thereof. That would probably be a reminder to go look at that email you sent them with the information on there, right? Maybe you have some type of pre-consultation questionnaire that you like people to take a look at. Maybe they don't have to answer it, but rather just so they know some of the questions that are going to come. Little things like that continue to drip and show that effectively you care and that they should show up to see you because you're a real human. So that would be big thing number
Yeah.
one. Some people make these
So
really complex, a lot of stages and like a lot of actions. I don't think you need to. You want to remind people the important ones 24 hours in advance and somewhere between like 30, 40 minutes ish in advance as well. So that's big thing number one that I'm going to say you should automate the moment you start to have 4 to 5 clients. If you're 1 or 2 clients, you should be doing all those things but manually. So it doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means maybe you're doing it manually and starting to get the hang of it and the wording and all those components. Because when you go to build the automation and you're like, oh, what do I say? You want to have something you're going to put in there.
Yeah. So, obviously in today's episode, we're talking about the how-to of the automations. In the last episode, if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that. Otherwise, this is not going to make sense. Obviously, the assumption is that if you're consuming this in this episode and you're trying to figure this out, you're drowning in administrative work. You're drowning in boring, mundane tasks. And what Steve is sharing are the things that we know most coaches, these are the little things that will cause you to leave hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars on the table. You'll forget to do a reminder email. You'll forget to send someone a welcome packet. You'll forget to do those things because frankly, you can't do all those things. If you're in a call and let's say you're doing consultations back to back, because that's just how you had your sales schedule stacked. You have a 3 p.m., a 4 p.m., a 5 p.m., 6 p.m. You're not going to be able to turn around and send someone 30 minutes prior that personalized message necessarily. And so this is why having something support you like an administrative assistant, which is the alternative, you go out and hire someone and do that. Not a bad idea, but more costly than having these automations set up. And so getting people to show up to sales calls, monumentally important. Getting people to show up to coaching calls, monumentally important. Anytime there's a service transaction, meaning you are delivering something, there's an actual belly-to-belly exchange, you need to be thinking about those things. What do I normally do? And what's the corresponding action? I need to send an email, right? So then how do I do that? And that's where something like Zapier can be super helpful. So, we talked about the sales one, we talked about showing up to a call. What are a couple other ones that in terms of, and you call these workflows or automations, or like, is there a specific terminology that
I would say, within Zapier, they're going to be called Zaps. Within Go High Level, they're going to be workflows. Within HubSpot, they're workflows or sequences. So I think for the container of our conversations, we'll call them interchangeably workflows and automations just because, but every platform, every software is usually going to have a different naming convention associated to it.
Makes sense. Like a lander and a fucking
funnel. Landers and funnels.
So, so don't get wrapped up in the vernacular, guys. But what would be a couple more?
So the second one I would do is going to be on the other side of that sales call. And I would say, a 2A and a 2B here. If somebody doesn't sign up, I would, and this will be the easier one, I would send them through a workflow that is going to give them 3 to 5 emails that just give value and continue to kind of remind them that you're there should they ever need help. Now, if somebody's truly not a fit, they're not your ideal client, there's some massive thing that they will truly never be a client and you don't have the knowledge or know-how or ability to truly help them, maybe you skip it. But And a good example is you're really good at training people for like shows, IFBB pro shows and all these things, but somebody who's, pregnant with triplets shows up and says that they have some type of, metabolic disease and all these things, is like, well, it's probably not in your wheelhouse. If you know somebody, cool, but otherwise don't sit there and say like, oh yeah, I can help you. It's going to be great. We're going to go ahead and, fast and dehydrate ourselves so we can see our veins. Like, no, bad idea. Okay. So, and that's just truly setting a really big example. But if you can help on any level, there's no harm in sending them 5 emails or more once a week for the next 5 weeks and just give them some information. Hey, was thinking about you, just wanted to go ahead and send you this thing over. Here's a thing that has helped a lot of people. I wouldn't sit there and go down the road of, oh, buy this and here's a discount and all that stuff, but just, I'm here, here's something helpful. On the other side of this, if they do sign up, you now want to send them very specific things, right? So if they don't sign up, send them some value. Remind them you're there. If they do sign up, first and foremost, after they make a payment, you want to make sure that whatever you're using for processing payments is going to send them a receipt. That way they know and they've confirmed that that payment has been made. If it doesn't automatically send them a receipt, then your first email to them should be some form of acknowledgement that they've paid and they're enrolled in your program. That's the first thing. The next thing, almost immediately after that, should be a separate email that is going to be any onboarding information that they need. Now, you probably went over it in your call and you sent them some, whatever it is, but every single thing you said, you should also send them an email. The reason is you're sitting here listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, unless you're taking meticulous notes, there's going to be something that gets missed. So I can elevate my customer service by making sure that they have that thing. Also, if they turn around and go, oh, you never told me I had to cancel 24 hours in advance or things like that, well, no, it's actually in here. Here's all the things I sent you on that day, right? So it's kind of a CYA, cover your ass situation as well. So those are the two things. The very next thing you're going to send, which is likely going to be a separate thing as well, is confirmation of whatever their next appointment is, along with any instructions that they need to start doing. Hey, thing number 1 that you do for the first week is just track your food and nothing else. Don't change how you eat. Don't do this. Don't do that. Go just track your food. I don't care if it's good, bad, ugly, whatever else. You bite it, you write it. Whatever that first instruction is, not programmatic kind of terminology and rules and things like that, but here's step 1, right? And we want to send it in separate emails because it makes it very specific, makes it more easily searchable. And it's also just, it is important enough. It has to come over and it's the same thing. To level up what you're doing, I would also send the instructions of what they need to be doing for the next period of time in a text message, right? Everybody's got different program setups and how they're running things. So that's all going to look a little bit different. So now we've sent them a receipt. We've sent them the rules of the program and things that they should expect and what their next set of instructions are, email and text message on that one. And now we're underway. From there, what I would do is I assume you have some type of other appointment set up, some type of other meeting, some type of group call that they hop on, some type of check-in information that is due at some point in time. In advance of that, so similar to try to get them to show up to the call, the sales call, we now want to go ahead and make sure we remind them of either their call, the group call, the submission of information, whatever it might be. I would ideally suggest 24 hours in advance. And then again, maybe morning or night before type situation. We're not going to always send 2 reminders, but if somebody is getting used to this new routine, as they're getting this built into their lifestyle, it would be helpful for the first 2 or 3 to give them that double reminder just to make sure that it doesn't fall through. Then after that, ease up and just kind of that one reminder. Hey, quick reminder, our call tomorrow, 11 a.m. Group call tomorrow night, 7 p.m., whatever it is. And you kind of let that settle down so we're not over inundating them with texts and emails for the sake of it. Now, what are we doing? Delivering them the receipt, give them the expectations, make sure they're going to stick to kind of the program and the things they should be doing, and show up to the things that are going to create that stickiness and consistency that we need for them to be successful and that we need in order to be able to help them the most, those are going to be the things that are going to kind of push us through. So go high level, your Calendly, your Zapier, those are all platforms that are going to effectively enable you to do that. The, trigger on these is going to be they signed up and we start going. The trigger on the appointment stuff is usually going to be a time in advance of the appointment date and time that happens. So that is likely going to be two different workflows as I'm saying it. The first 3 emails that are delivered and that fourth text, one. The second one is going to be now the reminders of their ongoing course and whatnot. The trigger there, again, Friday, 10 a.m., Zapier should know, okay, I have to send this out because at Saturday, 10 a.m., they have an appointment. And then it starts to run through the actions that it should. And again, it's just going to continue to look for when is an appointment, what do I do? When's an appointment, what do I do? And it'll keep that on autopilot moving forward.
So real quick, you mentioned something there of integrating multiple things like GHL, Calendly, Stripe. Like, guys, if you're listening and you're like, I don't know what any of those are and I have to do all of them, I would highly encourage you, because again, this is part 2, which would be the intermediate level of kind of automation / workflow / like starting to get into the how-tos. Find one platform at a time that's going to basically satisfy the needs of what your repetitive behaviors are. So if you need to regularly schedule, get a Calendly or get some kind of scheduling service and put that in there. I say Calendly because it's one of the things that has a lot of already built-in workflows. It'll send confirmation reminders, text messages, emails. So it has like a couple of these things already built in. And frankly, like if you're under 5 to 10 clients, that might be all you really need, because you can literally set up your payment processing stuff on there. There's a lot of different things. Zoom is also another scheduling platform option right now, where they actually have a way for people to go in and book it, because they're trying to compete with Calendly. So I think we'll see a lot of these platforms start to change. You might hear names that we mentioned, GHL, HubSpot, whatever they are. Go poke around a little bit, but by and large, think about what you're doing most, automate that. If it's pretty low level, low bandwidth, low cognitive demand, automate that first, and then move on to the next thing. Don't try to automate everything at the same time, because it's definitely going to feel very overwhelming for most people.
Yeah, 100%. You got to find what's right for you. Again, there's assumptions that you have some level of semblance if you're diving in deep on this episode. But if you do have questions, and there are certain programs I would recommend, based upon certain needs and whatnot, throw it in the comments. Happy to answer. These are things that we dive into a little bit deeper into Empowered as well, or, happy if you want to show up to one of our business development calls and just kind of ask this question on the kind of Q&A part, throw that in the comments. Happy to send you an invite, and just so you can check that out and just get that question answered. But so yeah, that would be like the second round of automations that I would kind of put in. And then I would say, again, there's 2 pieces there, but it's a branch depending upon somebody buys or not.
Yeah.
But the last thing that I would do is going to really be, how do I start to highlight what would be a assessment, reassessment / ascension and or referral time, right? Everybody's program is going to be a little bit different. I'll use a random arbitrary number, but you've been a client of mine for 6 weeks, and now it's time to go and just like start to really dive in and look at trends, look at this, and just do a little bit more than your basic check-in and start to understand some of the deeper details and just see, like, do we need a big course correction? Are things going well? What's going on in your brain? Again, longer than our quick check-in, and just let's make sure we dive in. So the first component of this is going to be the reminder side of things, for sure. Get them to show up. But I would also set the stage for what is going to be a conversation around continued progress. A lot of times I talk to a coach and they say, I have a 3-month program, I have a 3-month offering, I have this type of thing, or I have a 6-month. Fantastic. I don't know many people that truly achieve their goal in 3 or 6 months. And if people are achieving goals quickly, which is fantastic, most great coaches are great at helping identify what the next motivator for that person is. And I don't want that to be misconstrued with, you got to keep giving them goals so you can keep them a client. But people should continue to strive for a thing. Like, you don't get there and then just be like, cool, I'm done. I'm 30 and I never have to try doing a thing again. No, like, are we going to go run a Spartan race? Are we going to go run a High Rocks race? Are we going to go do backpacking? Are we going to go and gain lean muscle mass? Are we going to try to reduce body fat? Like, do we want to move away from longevity and go for, appearance and aesthetics? Like, what's the thing we're working towards, and what does that look like? Okay, great. So understanding that and having that conversation around, the idea of, hey, excited to see you for our thing tomorrow. Can't wait to go over all the progress we've made so far. Between now and tomorrow, I'd really love for you to show up with what some of your updated goals look like. That way we can start to tailor the program to continue to fit with what you want. Get them thinking about the future. They understand it. And then when they show up, start talking through that. And when they present goals that are going to be longer than what the program is, it is now time to have that conversation around that ascension, that kind of that retention side of things, of buy the next thing. Same process is going to repeat itself in another 4 to 6 weeks. Only on that call, making sure they show up, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Andrew, you've been getting great results. Here's this, here's that. We were able to knock down 2 goals. That's amazing. Just a quick question, be really helpful for me. Do you know anybody that has similar goals to you that I might be able to help out? All I need is their name, phone number, and email address. I'll reach out to them only one time. I promise I won't be a pest, but would just love to see if by chance I can help them out. Once you give that information to me, what we can actually do is throw a group text together, and you can just make the introduction, whatever it might be, whatever's easy, and go from there. If they happen to sign up, I'd love to give you a month of my coaching services for free. But again, we need them to show up to that appointment and go from that perspective. So those are going to be some of those components. If somebody does get somebody to sign up, when somebody does give you those new goals, following up post-appointment with some type of, again, confirmation email, here's what to expect, here's all the components, et cetera, are things that are great, because naturally as humans, we have questions. And we also are kind of, we think the worst in people, because it's like, I've always had this person that didn't fulfill. Well, no, make sure you send them emails. That's proof, that's tracking for both of you guys that now you're going to go follow through with what you said you were going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, like, more than anything, it's what are the repetitive things? How do you then set these things up? I just cycle after cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Tech platforms will come up, platforms will fold. So you just want to make sure that prior to getting into the automations, you understand what those processes are. If you come out of the gate and you are one of those few people, and I say few, that jumps straight into automations, does them well, and now all of a sudden you never took the time to understand the manual output that was required, it's going to be really hard for you to articulate that process to someone, which makes your business growth potentially really shaky when you start trying to hire people, because now you're not going to know how to, hey, I need this thing, and it's going to come across as a really frustrating experience for you as a business owner, because you don't know how to train that person, because you never took the time to think and understand the processes that were necessary and on a small scale before you start rapidly growing. Obviously, as you get bigger and your processes get more advanced, we're not telling you that you have to go be a webmaster or a graphic designer. That's not exactly the best use of your time. For the most part, if you're like anyone else, obviously there are exceptions, but you got to take the time to understand this stuff and reflect the same way that your clients are. How is this helping me move forward in my business? And the same thing that Doge is kind of finding right now, whether you agree with how they're going about it or not, really irrelevant. They just found, how many thousands of individuals still collecting Social Security after they literally, hit their centenarian age span. So there can be waste in automations, is what I'm saying. You can have too much, you can have not enough. And in fact, Steve, didn't you say something recently that you found a company that you heard about that had almost 400 automations, and it was like a rat nest of finding out where something was broken. And so being organized and knowing what you're doing and knowing what you're building and having clear line of sight around that and having a review process is so important. Otherwise, it turns into a really, really big mess that you're going to have to disentangle. God forbid if there are multiple 7 figures on the line for that.
Yeah. Don't over engineer the automations. do what you're doing the most of, and also do the things that you have to guarantee get done, right? Referrals, retention, ascension stuff, you should guarantee those things get done. When somebody signs up, you should guarantee they know what to expect. When somebody books an appointment, you should guarantee that they get reminders. Those only help make sure they show up, but also give a good customer experience. Those are also things that you have to do a lot, and it just saves you time. So when you can find things like that, fantastic. If you had to spend one time doing a thing, it's probably not the most ideal, like, problem solving time spent in your business by turning this thing into automations. Like, it happens once a month right now. Sure, it might be important, but I guarantee you there's things that happen once a week or once a day that you could go and automate instead.
Yeah. Outside of getting paid, obviously, if you bill monthly, make
sure. Sure.
That
should be automated.
I can probably I mean, everything else, I mean, and it's not as complex as and by the way, if you are feeling intimidated right now, which I know I was the first time I went up Zapier, I was like, what the fuck is this? You can do what with do this and one place to, I think, start from the coaching perspective is automating your coach notes. So what you can do is you go into Zapier, you have it set to, register a Zoom call is complete. That would be the trigger. Then the action would be pull a transcription or pull the recording, put it into Google Drive would be the trigger action. Another subsequent action, because they go multiple levels sometimes, is then to pull a transcript out, right? That would be an action, and put it into GPT for a summary. And then you can take that and put it into a meetings doc somewhere. And so that might be something where if you're like, I don't have time for pay. And I ran into a chiropractor recently I was doing some consulting with, and the person was a new grad, drowning in the admin stuff, phenomenal clinician, right? And this is pretty common of like, they love doing what they do. They hate the admin stuff. Most coaches usually fall in that domain, or health service providers. So then automating your notes and remembering what you did in a day where you're seeing like 8 people back to back, or you have 9 coaching calls and you don't even have time to eat lunch. That's one of the fastest ways to spiral your business and your professional reputation on the ground, is not being meticulous with the notes that you're taking. And if you can't take them, use what's already there. It does a transcription. There is GPT to go in there and summarize it, create some action items and deliverables in there. So that way, next time, right before the call, you pull it up, you look so much more professional when you're like, oh, hey, this is what we did last time. Let's recap what we talked about. How'd those deliverables go? And what obstacles did you come up against those action items? And how can I help you solve those? That's what a coach does at the end of the day, is help people execute on the work. And so that's probably one of the bigger ones that I would suggest most people get into, beyond like collecting payment, getting people to the call. Once you have the client, you have to be able to serve as a client at a high level if you want a referral. And that's what I would do personally. So any closing thoughts? As we've kind of shared a couple examples of automations and workflows in today's episode.
Just, again, keep the advice from episode 1 and what we've said here. Keep it simple, solve the immediate problem, expand upon it after that, good, better, best. Focus on creating workflows and automations around the things you're repetitively doing, so it saves you time and it guarantees it happens. And don't go crazy. When you want to smash the computer because it ain't working, take 5 minutes and walk away. I had to do that yesterday.
Yeah, seriously. And if you do find out that you are spending an inordinate amount of time in front of that computer, you will literally become less creative the more execution you do. So you do need to regularly build in breaks. Otherwise, you'll get to a problem. And this is where when you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know how to solve this, that's probably usually a really great time for you to go spend 30 minutes away, go eat, breathe, go get some sun. Go do a cold plunge or whatever that guy's doing on social media right now, where he just dips his face in Saratoga fucking water 7 times a day before 4 a.m. You guys know what trend I'm talking about. If you don't, and this is like 2028 and you're finding this, go look up the jacked guy that literally just puts his face in cold water. But anyways, yeah. So I think that's pretty much it for today. Anything?
That's it. We appreciate you listening Beyond the Pump today. If you haven't subscribed yet, go do so. Like the episode, throw some comments down there. And we look forward to breaking down the business of fitness and nutrition with you next time.